Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources and distill the most important insights, giving you a shortcut to being well informed. Okay, imagine you're building the next big web application. Maybe it's a dynamic analytics dashboard, could be a social platform, or, even just a personal blog with some interactive features. You've got your brilliant ideas, but then you hit this kind of fundamental fork in the road. Which core toolset do you actually pick to bring it all to life? Today, we're dissecting that exact dilemma. We're plunging into the, let's say, legendary clash of web frameworks, React versus Angular. Our mission here is to help you navigate their strengths, their weaknesses, understand their sort of philosophical differences, and ultimately figure out which one might align best with your goals.
Exactly. And this isn't just about, syntax or technical details. It's really about making a foundational choice for your learning path or maybe your next big project. Because for anyone venturing into building complex front-end applications, trying to rely only on plain JavaScript, well, it can quickly become incredibly cumbersome, really difficult to manage. That's precisely where robust frameworks like React and Angular step in. They provide the necessary structure, the conventions, these powerful tools that make it genuinely possible to sculpt those intricate, responsive user interfaces we all use every day.
Right, so these frameworks are basically the architects of modern web complexity. When we think about the major players in this space, why does the conversation seem to so often boil down specifically to React versus Angular?
Well, you're right. The primary contenders you'll usually hear about are React, Angular, and also Vue. But it's true, the discussion frequently zeroes in on Angular and React, I think largely because they represent two pretty distinct philosophies in web development. And crucially, they're both incredibly robust, actively maintained tools. You've got Angular backed by Google, React by Facebook. That tells you there's strong support, continuous evolution. The really crucial takeaway here for you, the listener, is that there's no inherently bad choice. While people hesitate thinking, one must be superior, honestly, both are excellent. You absolutely won't regret learning either one. It's much more about finding the right fit for you.
Okay, that's a huge reassurance, especially when you're just starting out, right? You don't want to invest all that time in something that might feel like the wrong choice later. So the key message is basically don't get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most important step is simply to start building something. Don't let the sheer volume of options paralyze your learning journey. Just knowing that both are titans in the industry, backed by these major tech giants, well, it means you're learning skills that are highly in demand, skills that will stay relevant for years to come.
All right, let's unpack Angular first then. If we're thinking about web development, like building a structure, what's Angular's core philosophy? Is it like working with a really meticulously detailed blueprint, or is it something else?
That's actually a great analogy. Angular is often described as having a very opinionated structure, which basically means it comes with a clear, predefined way of doing things. It's almost like a comprehensive construction kit. Every tool, every component has its designated place and function. For instance, your routing files, which handle how users navigate between different sections of your app without that full page reload out. Your main application components, your custom components, they all have a specific expected location within your project's folder structure. And then there's the Angular CLI, the command line interface tool. It's really powerful. It reinforces this consistency, helps you quickly generate code, set up projects, almost like having a blueprint designer right there with you. Now, while this can be incredibly beneficial for consistency, especially, in large teams, it does mean adhering pretty closely to Angular's established conventions.
And that structured approach is really a hallmark of Angular, isn't it? I've also heard that it generally requires you to learn TypeScript right from the get-go. Can you break that down? What is TypeScript, and why is that a significant point for a beginner?
Yeah, it's a critical distinction. TypeScript is essentially a superset of JavaScript. Think of it like JavaScript with added superpowers, specifically static typing. It's like adding extra guardrails to your code. So instead of waiting for a bug to pop up when your application runs, TypeScript helps catch potential errors, like, say, trying to assign a number to a variable that's supposed to hold text, a string, during the development phase itself. This generally leads to more robust code, it's more self-documenting, and you get better tooling support in your code editor too.
Okay.
Now, for experienced developers, this is often seen as a major plus. However, for beginners, maybe people just getting comfortable with plain JavaScript, learning TypeScript definitely adds another layer, albeit a valuable one, to that initial learning curve.
Okay, so given Angular's sort of comprehensive nature, does that mean it comes with pretty much everything you need right out of the box? Or are you still patching it together with external libraries like you might with a more minimal framework?
That's a good question. Angular really does aim to be a complete bundle solution.
Yeah.
Many functionalities you'd expect in a modern web app, like that routing we mentioned earlier, navigating between pages, it's built right in, ready to use. So you don't need to go hunting for third-party libraries for those core things. Its official documentation is also exceptionally strong, very thorough. Angular also introduces its own specific concepts, like directives, which are basically special instructions for how your HTML behaves and renders, and lifecycle hooks, such as NGONet. These hooks are like predefined checkpoints during a component's life. They let your code run at specific moments, giving you really fine-grained control over how your application behaves. Now, while these are Angular-specific things you have to learn, once you grasp them, they significantly streamline your development process within that Angular ecosystem.
Okay, so if Angular offers this highly structured blueprint, almost like a carefully pre-designed city, what's it like building with React? Is it more like a flexible, build-your-own kind of modular system?
That's a perfect way to put it, actually. React takes a much more minimal and less opinionated approach. Instead of being a comprehensive framework, React is often described more as a library, specifically for building user interfaces. It allows developers to use direct JavaScript concepts much more easily. It gives you a lot more freedom in how you structure your project. For someone who has just learned JavaScript, React often feels like a very natural, almost intuitive extension. And interestingly, it often deepens their core JavaScript skills because you end up writing more direct JavaScript logic yourself.
Interesting. So if React is more minimal, does that mean you then have to install a lot of separate pieces to get a fully functional app, like routing or maybe managing the application's state?
Yes, exactly. That's a key distinction. For functionalities like routing, you typically need to install and configure a separate library. Often it's a community maintained one, like React Router, which is very popular. And while React can also use TypeScript, and many teams do, setting it up can sometimes feel a bit more involved for beginners compared to Angular, where it's just deeply integrated from the start. React primarily manages data flow through concepts like passing props. You can think of them as properties or arguments you pass down to components and functions. Passing functions down to components too. This tends to promote a simpler unidirectional data flow. Many developers find this easier to trace and debug compared to Angular's more complex two-way data binding mechanisms, where changes in one place can sometimes automatically update data somewhere else.
Gotcha. So we have Angular, the opinionated TypeScript first, complete solution on one side, and then React, more flexible JavaScript focused, modular on the other. We've mapped out their core philosophies, but how do these different approaches translate when, the rubber meets the road? What does that mean for how the applications actually perform, maybe? Or for a developer trying to sort of peer under the hood at what the client-side computation is doing?
Right, this is where understanding the practical implications really matters for you, the listener. Let's break it down. First, learning curve. React generally has an easier initial learning curve, especially if you're already comfortable with JavaScript. You can get started building things pretty quickly. Angular, on the other hand, well, it has a steeper initial curve, mainly because you need to learn TypeScript and its own specific concepts up front. But once you overcome that initial hurdle, it can feel very productive. Second, structure. Angular provides that strong, predefined structure. This can be immensely beneficial for large teams or complex enterprise projects where you really need uniformity and consistency. React offers much more flexibility, more freedom in how you structure your project. That can be great for smaller projects, rapid prototyping, or if you just prefer having more control over your architectural choices. Third, bundled versus modular. Angular is that fully bundled solution, many features built in. That means less decision-making about which extra libraries to use for core stuff. React is more minimal. It allows you to pick and choose libraries for specific functionalities.
This offers greater customizability, sure, but it does require more initial setup decisions. And fourth, language focus. Angular strongly encourages and integrates TypeScript, which honestly is a valuable skill in itself for large code bases. React lets you primarily work with JavaScript, which can enhance those core skills. Though it's worth saying, TypeScript is also a very popular and well-supported option in the React world too.
That's a really clear breakdown of those core philosophical differences. What about the performance aspect, though? Developers are always chasing those higher scores, faster load times.
Yeah.
Does one framework maybe have a natural advantage there, or is it more about how you build with them?
Yeah, that's a common question. It's largely about how you build, but their underlying architectures do offer sort of different paths to optimization. For instance, React uses something called a virtual DOM. It's like a lightweight copy of the actual browser DOM. When data changes, React first updates this virtual DOM, then efficiently calculates the minimal changes needed, and only then updates the real browser DOM. This process, called reconciliation, can often make it feel more intuitive for developers to trace how much client-side computation is happening and where optimizations might be needed. This could potentially lead to quicker performance wins when you're targeting metrics like higher Lighthouse scores, Google's auditing tool for page performance, accessibility, SEO. However, it's important to say a deep understanding of Angular's change detection mechanisms can absolutely achieve equally impressive optimization results. So neither has an inherent, insurmountable advantage, but their approaches to achieving efficiency definitely differ.
Okay, that makes sense. Speaking of choices, I've heard some chatter, in the developer community about people actually moving between these frameworks. Is there a noticeable trend? Are developers migrating from one to the other? And if so, what might be driving that?
That's a really fascinating observation, and yeah, there is some truth to that. While developers certainly use and stick with both, there is a noted trend, or at least a perception of a trend, of developers migrating from Angular to React more often than the other way around. Now, this isn't necessarily a condemnation of Angular at all, but often speaks to React's perceived lower barrier to entry for things like rapid prototyping, and also the sheer breadth of its community-driven ecosystem. Developers sometimes cite that React's less prescriptive nature allows for maybe faster experimentation, and the vast availability of ready-made solutions, packages, in the React community can feel less restrictive than Angular's more opinionated bundled approach, especially maybe for smaller teams or projects. It's also worth noting Angular has undergone significant updates over the years, famously that major rewrite from the old AngularJS to Angular 2 and the versions after. But, ongoing updates happen roughly every 6 months now, and the core knowledge remains fundamentally relevant. Your skills don't just become obsolete overnight, much like how updates in Python or Java build upon core principles.
Right, so you're not throwing everything away with each update. Okay, so boiling it all down, what does this all mean for our listener who's maybe standing at this crossroads right now, trying to make that initial crucial choice?
Okay, the bottom line. If you're looking to start quickly, build applications with perhaps less initial conceptual overhead, especially if you're already comfortable with JavaScript. React might feel like a more natural and faster fit. It will also very likely deepen your core JavaScript skills along the way. If, however, you prefer a fully bundled solution where everything or most core things are provided and integrated, and you're willing to invest the time upfront in learning TypeScript and Angular-specific conventions, then Angular is an incredibly powerful choice. It can make your development life significantly easier once you've really learned its robust conventions and ecosystem.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. We've navigated the highly structured world of Angular, the flexible landscape of React, explored their core differences, their philosophies, and even looked at how developers sometimes move between them. It seems really clear there's no single best answer here, but definitely a best for you answer, an answer that's deeply tied to your own preferences, your project needs, and probably your learning style too.
Absolutely. And ultimately, theoretical understanding, like this conversation, it only takes you so far. My strongest recommendation, honestly, get your hands dirty. Try them both out yourself. There are many excellent short crash courses out there for both, often just an hour or two long. Try building a really simple application, maybe a basic to-do list or a simple calculator, something like that in both frameworks. That will give you a far clearer, much more intuitive idea of which one genuinely resonates more with your learning style and just your preferred way of working.
That's a fantastic takeaway. Get hands-on. So as you perhaps embark on your own coding journey, maybe try building the same simple thing with these two different tool sets. What might you discover about your own problem-solving approach, your personal preferences, when you try out two fundamentally different philosophies for achieving the same goal? Until